You are going to encounter hard times. There's going to be trials, there's going to be people that are going to test you, but as a Christian, it does not have to be as hard as you may perhaps be thinking it is. And what I'm going to teach you in this video is some cues, some strategies, essentially some identity shifts that you can start making so that when you do encounter these situations, in fact, you may be currently going through one right now. I've done recent videos where I am too. I'm going to teach you exactly what I do and how I'm able to navigate through those uncertain situations and basically turn it into a situation, an opportunity, a blessing in which I can learn, grow and develop from. Now I want to tell you a story, and this is something that I came up with myself, and when I like to look at things, which is a bit of a weird thing to say, but when I do look at things, I always try to think of the bigger picture. What is it actually trying to tell me? And one of the things that I've always been fascinated by is church arches. And the reason why I'm so fascinated by them is just how they can be so grand. If you look at what is around in the modern day world and what we actually see, you know, with the buildings, the way the architecture lays right now, one of the conversations that I find myself in time and time again is how it's just changed. It's just nowhere near as beautiful, as majestic as what it used to be. And yet when you step into a church, or at least the church that I've seen, I'm just in awe of its beauty, its presence, and just the aura that it simply has. And the church arches are just something that blows me away every single time. And my analogy of church arches is really quite magical. So if we look at every instance in the Bible where a prophet, someone that was called upon by God to go and do a great task, they've always had to go up. When Moses went up and got the Ten Commandments, he had to go up a mountain. When there's been other instances where other prophets have been called, they've always had to go up to receive the word of God. God is always calling us to come to him as opposed to him coming to us. And if we look at scripture, what we can see here is God sent down, I think this is the Holy Creed that we say every service, God sent down his only son and he was made man. So it's not only the fact that we must go up to receive the word of God, but it's literal proof that when Jesus was, essentially transcended and came down and was made man, he came down to us. So I like to see the church arch as you've got two bases and everything points towards God. If you look at an arch, essentially what happens is it all meets in one central point. I like to view that point as God, or the Holy Trinity, and it's the idea that no matter where you are in the bottom, everything points towards God. You can't build one side of the arch because it's never going to be an arch, it's going to be incomplete. So the idea here is that God completes that circle. So when you're building, when you're trying to create something, it is all done and it all points towards God. I've done a video on another channel where I have certain prerequisites for success, achieving a high life, and just generally becoming the best version of you. And one of those things is returning to faith, because if you want to become a better version of you, make more money, have a better lifestyle, that concept of wanting more, wanting to become more, is the very presence of wanting to become part of something bigger. And the biggest thing of them all is God. So my analogy of the church is basically represents everything about us. We can't create anything unless it is given by God. Those arches, we must essentially go up and up and up, and we must meet God. So my sort of how I've been able to picture that is just being able to give me so much meaning, so much clarity, so much purpose. And it's such a simple thing. Most people can just look at an arch and think it looks cool, but I've been able to admire it, understand it, and then basically transfigure my own message to really just give myself that oomph of power that sometimes I need on a day-to-day basis. So that was just a little bit of a side note. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But when it comes to navigating situations, most of these situations are going to be unwanted. What you do in every single situation is one of two things: you either react or you respond. You see, the thing that most people do is they are always reacting. When you give power to something, it controls you, controls your thoughts, emotions. Your emotions then determine your actions then determine your reality. So if you're giving power to these unwanted things by reacting, giving it too much of an emotion, this could be a person, this could be a situation, it could be something that has just happened to you. If you are reacting to it, you're essentially giving it passage to control you. And when you let it control that much of you and you give it more access on what it deserves, it will quite literally control your entire reality. So if you think of it as a person at work you don't like, a partner that you're not gelling with, and you know that it's time to call quits, the more that you continue to react to these things, the more that they have got power over you. They're accessing your energy and they're able to control how you think, feel, walk, talk, act. There's been instances even when I've grown up where the environments that I've been have created these gaps and broken down my character, and it warped my mind into thinking that I am the things that they were trying to say I was. I wasn't destined for good things. wasn't talented, wasn't meant to do and create these situations that I'm living in right now. When I started to break free from that, I was then able to spend time with myself, and when I'm still, I'm with God. It allowed me to be still. The one thing that I did then is the opposite. So instead of reacting, I started to respond. If you can learn to respond in situations, what you'll find is that there's a little bit of a buffer gap, because somebody says something to you that you don't like and you react instantly, you're going to be saying the first thing that comes to you instinctively, which one can't be undone, and more often than not makes the situation worse. But if you can respond, responding is going to take a moment of calmness, it's going to take a moment of quiet. So you pause, you think, and then you respond. Sometimes you don't have to respond with words, sometimes you can just remove yourself from the situation. That one shift will do monumental differences when it comes to encountering these situations, because what it's showing, even if you're not speaking, is it's a declaration that that person, that situation cannot reign control over you. And also, because you're responding, that moment of stillness allows God to essentially fill you and guide you in the next steps. There's been times where the old me would have wanted to not necessarily lash out, because I've never even been like a mega angry person, but for me what I used to do would be I would go inside internally, not say anything, and just accept it. And I would just want to get as far away from the situation as possible. So mentally and emotionally I would start running away. Whereas when I started to respond, I would look at the situation in the eyes, more often than not a person, and I would just respond. That for me in responding is maintaining a level sense of energy, making sense that I'm focused and aligned, and not letting them show that I am bothered by what they say. Because what they're looking for in that situation is a reaction. They're wanting to know that they've said something that hurts you, bothers you, and they're trying to control your next move. So it's almost like a game of chess. I'm not going to get into the rules of chess. If you play it, you know. But the idea here is you want to play certain moves at the right time. If you play one move, it means one thing. If you can play a better move, it means a better thing, right? So learning to respond will allow you to control the situation to your power, make sure that you can come out the other side winning, and also make sure that that person will never probably bother you again. Because when these people look for reactions, because they've got so much missing themselves, they need to basically pry it out of you. Humans have this battle for energy control. We want to control other people, we want to control their realities, their emotions, the way they think, feel. So if you can stop that and make a declaration of saying, you know what, I understand what you're doing, I'm looking you right in the eyes right now, but I'm going to respond. That could be me removing myself away from the situation, it could be me responding, not all. It could also be me taking the right action. Sometimes if someone poses a threat to you, you have to be able to act, and that means getting control of the situation, protecting people around you. There's loads of instances where that is going to take place and you're going to need to step up and respond. It's an uncomfortable thing to do, and it's not going to be the easiest thing to do. The best thing to do is start small. Start looking at the daily things that you're encountering. It could be snoozing your alarm, it could be skipping the gym, it could be eating too much junk food, it could be getting into pointless arguments, or worse yet, the very obvious one, if you're a driver, is road rage. Start learning to respond in those situations. Pause, take a deep breath, and you'll be surprised how much calmer and how much easier it is to navigate. Sometimes humility can work. In fact, humility as a Christian is a very, very powerful thing. It aligns with obedience, with discipline. So if you can learn to just laugh at situations, there's been times where someone's wanted to disrespect me, try to get an emotional reaction. I just laugh, because what I'm essentially saying there is, you are beneath me, you do not have the power to control how I think, feel and act. And that sort of aligns into my next point. And I was just recently journal about this, and just to show you, this is my journal, right? So I journal in this multiple times a day. I do exercises, I do scripting, spend time with God. This is like a written prayer book, right? When you write stuff down, it's naturally just a physical, you can think things and it's good to think, it's good to read and be with your thoughts and be still. But I find that when you can actually journal stuff down and write down what you're thinking, for unwanted thoughts, it gets it out of your mind and onto paper. But for wanted thoughts, it allows you to script and really redesign what you're thinking. And one of the things that I've just been going on about is identifying what is beneath me. And if something's beneath you, you have to look down there. A bit like the story that I gave with the church arches and how I'm able to envision those. If you can start basically reordering your life, reordering these unwanted situations, right now the way that you're looking at it is that it's either equal to you, greater than, or better than you currently are. That could be a job, it could be an instance, like a situation, maybe somebody has cut you off in the road. If you're reacting, you are basically saying you are above me and I'm basically going to react how you see fit. Because if you can flip down its head and start putting it beneath you, why would you respond to something that's beneath you? It makes no logical sense whatsoever. So if you can actually start to reposition these things as being beneath you, you're automatically on above it. They've got to look up to you, they've got to come up to you to essentially even try to disrupt your energy or pierce your stillness. Now all of this is important, and I don't want you to come into this video thinking that this is mind control tactics to control people. It's not all. The upside of you doing this, the upside of you maintaining a level-headed sense, of you allowing to be more rooted, more planted, means that you can be still more. Because if you've got all this outside noise and you're able to just deflect it, say no to this, no to that, you're beneath me, not happening today, you're going to have this level of stillness and mental clarity where you're going to be able to think better, spend time with God more. You can't really truthfully read the Bible, you can't sit in a church service when you've got all of these mental demons battling you. If you on a Sunday and you hate your job, you can't really be truly present whilst you've got that looming sense of I've got going to work tomorrow, I've got someone that's just really doing my head in lately. It's going to make it a lot harder to focus and do what God is calling for you to do, which is not for me to say, that's for a conversation with you and God in your daily prayers. So if you can actually start to reposition things in your life, you can basically reorder it so that you can create more mental space for yourself, allow you to think more clearly. It's going to make things a lot more easier to understand. The next thing, we'll sort of go into two more points in this video. The other one is unlearning, right? If we look at what baptism is, symbolically it is a rebirth. It is a declaration that you are aligning and following and committing to Christ, and essentially you are being born again into a new life, a new version of you. And when it comes to unlearning things, I always thought that getting smarter was all about acquiring new things, new knowledge, new information, new things. As you can tell with the books behind me, I'm definitely an avid learner for new knowledge, and this is absolutely important, but there is so much more unlearning that you have to do than it actually is learning. If you think you've been asleep longer than you've actually been awake. And what I mean by that is if you've been baptized at birth, baptized recently, or you are generally just new in your faith and wanting to follow something new, you've got this new thought that you probably entertained for a couple of months, a couple of years, against years of programming. Because even though we all want nice things and we all want to live a nice, rooted, grounded lifestyle that is authentic to us, one of freedom, where we're not having to answer to someone, we've got to go against years of programming, of school, of systems, of sometimes parents that just tell us to get a job, to stay in the system, to do this, and just follow the way of life, follow the way that they've always followed. So when you're making this new declaration, you are trying to go against years of programming. And there's neurological aspects of this that I can teach you. So Hebb's law. When neurons fire together, they're wired together. So when you're thinking the same ways repeatedly over and over again, those neurons begin to wire together and creates a stronger energetic signal. So when you are trying to think of new things, new ways of being, new ways of living, of thinking, of learning to be still, to handle these situations, you've essentially got to fire new neurological pathways. So that is going to take a lot more time to fire these in new ways. So when it comes to unlearning stuff, you've actually got to start questioning a lot more. Unlearning something is letting go. The only way to unlearn something is to let go. You can't try to decipher it. You can't try to decode it and try to be above it. It's just something that you have to let go, because when you let go, it creates space. It creates this chasm where you can then begin to think in new ways. If you're constantly trying to hold on to your old ways of thinking while simultaneously trying to create new ways of thinking and doing, you're always going to be carrying one unwanted weight, and it's also going to be harder to connect and wire those new neurological connections on a more consistent, stronger basis. So you have to start unlearning a lot of things. This has been very, very hard. One of the things in an entrepreneurial sense is unlearning days of the week. How many times do we get to Sunday and we just think, you know what, it's Sunday, I'm just going to relax, or Saturday or weekends. The attitude that people have towards weekends versus during the week is completely different. People will be completely different versions of themselves. They'll be working through the week, get in the club on a Saturday. It makes no sense. If you can learn to unlearn those days of the week, because a day of the week, what's Monday, what's Tuesday, what's Saturday, what's Sunday, these are all man-made constructs. These do not exist. These were made by man in a Western world to influence working culture, in the sense that you would work some days and have some days off, so that you could rest and then become recuperated and basically be a better employee. If you can learn to unlearn those days of the week, what you'll find is that there is no Monday, there is no Tuesday, there is just this moment, right here, right now, that will allow you to then make the right decisions. That is a huge thing to take on. It's been something that I'm still working on, but it's genuinely been a very influential thing for me, because now what I'm finding is that I can give my best, I can do what's required of me whatever it is, whatever time, even right now it is just after 10 we're filming this video. The old version of me, or what the Western world wants me, is to be watching Netflix, be in bed, resting, perhaps in the club, doing unruly things, unlearn those things, and by unlearning those things I create this mental space for myself where I can now start to do other things, like making this video for you, like spreading the word of God and helping you become a better Christian. So unlearning things is super beneficial. The next thing is actually looking, so you'll notice what we're doing now is inversion thinking. Inversion thinking is basically doing the opposite, and the more that you define the opposite, you're eventually going to be left with a list of the things that you should do. So as a Christian, it's not so much what you do, it's more so what you don't do. If you can stack up a load of actions of the things that you are not doing, by default you're going to be left with a certain amount of actions that you are going to be called to do. So let's look at things that you shouldn't do. Should you be in the club? No. Should you be gossiping about others? No. Should you be getting angry at other people? No. Should you be getting in physical fights when it's not required? When it's not required for you to protect other people? Absolutely not, no. Should you be swearing? No. Should you be watching TV shows that incite a lustful lifestyle, that demand too much of your energy, that is not going to bring out the best version of you? No. Are you doing things that are not aligning with the ideal version of you, the one that God has called upon? No. So if you can start to build a list of these things that you are not doing, what you'll find is that you become more rooted and more planted in yourself, not because of the things that you do, but because of the things that you don't do. And if that begins to stack up and it's almost the opposite to what other people are doing, you'll start to excel, you'll start to grow, you'll start to move a little bit different, and people are going to receive it differently, often met with criticism, because you've got to think, whilst they're in the clubs and they can see you in church on a Sunday reading the Bible and speaking in a more calmer presence, they're going to be threatened by that because you're doing the one thing that they've always never done. A lot of people want to live this lifestyle, but because it's so hard, because it requires so much letting go and killing of the ego, essentially to be baptized and return to faith, what you'll find is that you start to move different, so you can elevate a lot faster. These people aren't even going to try you because what's the sense? They just physically don't have access to you. So because you start to elevate and grow, all of these things now that used to bother you, that used to test you, that used to try to come up and control you, now no longer even know where you are. They can't even locate you because vibrationally and emotionally they're just not good enough for you, because God is the one that is aligning and walking with you. To walk with God and to be a Christian is so much better than an unruly and unrighteous and unreligious lifestyle. You'll almost become untouchable because you've got the spirit, you've got the attitude, you've got the characteristics that come with being a Christian that are just impenetrable by unwanted, more often than not westernized actions that are trying to pull you back off of track. So we're going to wrap the video up there. It feels like I've only been talking for about 5 minutes, but we've actually been talking for near 20 minutes, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and I'll see you guys for the next one.